And now, please help me to welcome to the stage 20-year sales veteran, comedy producer, recovering stand-up comedian, and all-around awesome guy. He's, I'll say your name here, even though it doesn't say it on there, Jay Mays. He's worked with some of the biggest names in entertainment, including the Miami Marlins, TEDx, and Live Nation. And as founder of Pitch Lab, he combines the worlds of comedy and sales to help you differentiate from the competition, build stronger relationships, and help more clients. Warm welcome to Jay Mays.
Keep it going, John Wilker, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate you grabbing a seat, Kirk. He's like 6'7", and I'm like, I don't want that on camera. That's too much of a disparity. It's like Tom Cruise. You can't get on stage with Tom Cruise if you're above like 5'7", I believe. All right, let's get going. Let's get going. These are my two kids. My wife speaks 3 languages. I only speak 1. She goes out of town for work, and I'm like, babe, I totally got it. Don't even worry about it. I totally got it. Just go. Just go. Shushed her right out the door. It wasn't 5 minutes later. I'm trying to get little man's shoes on. He's got those awesome Captain America light-up shoes. I'm trying to get his shoes on, and he looks me in the eye, and he goes, Shua. And I had no idea what he was talking about. So he won that. We threw the shoes in the car. Off we went. Later that night, I'm trying to get him to drink his milk. I'm like, buddy, if you want to get big and strong like Captain America, you got to drink your milk. Stirred in that Nesquik, handed it to him. He looked at me again and said, no, Shua. And I'm like, oh, what is he saying to me? So my wife comes back in town. He says it a 3rd time. And I'm like, babe, what is this Shua? And she looks at him and looks at me and then looks at him and says, Tyler, do you mean Fika na sua? And he says, yeah, Shua. And she says, oh, Jay, he's been telling you in Portuguese to mind your own business. The question here is not who's in charge in my house. But the question is, when it comes to your team, does everyone speak the same language when it comes to storytelling? So welcome. We're going to have an awesome session today, how to tell a captivating story like a stand-up comedian. Just scream it out. What do you think of when you think of the word captivating? Anybody? What do you think of? Say again? Attention. I love it. What else do you think of? Captivating. Intense? Engaging. That's a good one. That's a good one. Curiosity. Perfect. What else? One more. Entertaining. Good one. What about while you're talking, getting folks to hang up their phones, right? To get off their laptops. What about that? Anybody in here use Siri, voice to text, to do text message? Do you? Do you like it?
I do, but I really hate texting, so.
Okay. I like it. I use it all the time too, and then I have to go back and correct a bunch of stuff. But I use it a lot in front of my daughter. She hears me use it all the time. So we called my wife. It went to voicemail, and I'm like, baby, she's not there. Just leave her a voicemail. And it was like, beep, and she goes, Mom, I love you. I miss you. I can't wait to see you. Explanation point. Right into the voicemail. It was adorable. It was adorable. But that's what captivating means, right? To be able to grab that attention and keep it. So let's talk about you. By show of hands, how many founders, CEOs do we have here? Okay, that have to sell to clients. You got to sell to investors. How many salespeople in here? You have the title of salesperson. Me too. Me too. How about you're not in sales, but you're client facing? You have to get in front of clients. Okay. Who didn't raise their hand? A few. Okay, in the back. You're a student, right? No? What do you do in the back? Yeah. Loud. What do you do? That's awesome. All right. Entrepreneur. What else? Who over here? I love it. I love it. He is interviewing, wants to be able to tell stories to prospective interviewers so he can talk about his value. Awesome. All right, another question for you. Who in here, by show of hands, has ever bailed? You decided no way. Bailed on buying something because you did not like that salesperson? Yeah, absolutely. Lisa, you laughed. What are you thinking of? What'd you bail on? Buying, same here. You didn't like the guy or the gal, right? Okay, conversely, who in here has ever bought something you really didn't need because you really liked the salesperson? You felt that connection. You were fast. Did you know where I was going? What did you buy? As long as they connect with you? All right, who else? You bought something you really didn't need. Lisa, you go again. I'm so glad you're up front. Let's do this. They got you? They got you. Who else? One more. What'd you buy you really didn't need? Ooh. Mitch.
Door-to-door extermination services.
Door to door. And it was a adult or like a Girl Scout that came?
It was an adult.
All right. Girl Scouts get me too. All right. The punchline here is, before we go on, in my pitch labs, the number one most common answer is juicer. Juicer. So beware of very charismatic juicer salespeople next time you're in the mall. But the punchline here is the differentiator is you. Whether you're a CEO trying to get that next round of investment, whether you're a salesperson trying to win the deal, help the clients, or you're like the gentleman in the back that's looking for a job, the differentiator is you. And the best way to differentiate is stories. So let's do it. We're going to do a quick framework for stories. So I know you've heard this a million times, and I know you believe in stories because you're here. But why stories? One more question, I promise. I'll get to some good content. One more question. Who in here has ever gone to a live comedy show, laughed hysterically for an hour, went home, went to sleep, woke up the next morning, you could barely remember a single joke? All the time that happens to me. All the time. But if I asked you, Jazz, awesome name. If I asked you, Jazz, what is one of your favorite movies of all time? Dumb and Dumber. Anybody else? One of your favorite movies of all time? Braveheart. Good one. Jaws. Julie? Forgetting Sarah Marshall. What'd you say in the back? Goonies? All right. Revenge of the Nerds. Goonies. Awesome. If I asked you, what's the basic plot of your favorite movie? Could you tell me? Absolutely. We can't remember the jokes. We can't remember the one-liners, but we can remember the plot of a movie. And that's what our clients, that's what our investors feel like when we get in front of them and we're spitting out facts and figures and stats and all the great things. None of that's sticking. You wrap it in a story, you got a much better chance. Stories are memorable, they're sticky, and they work on a different part of our brain. So let's jump in. I am about to give you 5 essential elements for a great story, no matter what the story is. 5 essential elements. And let's start. Number 1, a story framework. So the farther along I get in my career, I realize there is a framework for everything. You don't know what you're doing, just find a framework, learn it, break the rules. So, one more question for you. Who in here has ever heard of the story spine, storytelling framework, by show of hands? A couple of people, good. Okay. I don't like it. I thought it would be more controversial. I imagined lots of hands going up and then me Xing it out and everybody going, what? Wasn't that controversial. Story spine framework. Once upon a time, every day, one day, because of that, until finally. I don't like it. I think it's too complicated. So I researched, why is the story spine? Why is that so popular? And it turns out it's from Pixar. And a bunch of folks just stole it from Pixar, and now they're trying to use it in a business setting. I don't like it. I don't like it because it's a little bit too complex. And I think when I tried to use it the first time, I wasn't able to use it properly, and it made me feel like I was a bad storyteller. So if anybody here is into spine storytelling, that's totally fine, but I want to go simpler. Anybody ever heard of The Hero's Journey by show of hands? Okay. If you have not heard of The Hero's Journey, do not Google it. It will ruin every movie for you. It will ruin Harry Potter, Star Wars, Thor. It will ruin everything. I don't like this one either. I mean, if you're George Lucas, or you want to write a movie that makes $1 billion, use the story spine. I want to do something a little bit easier. So this is our first takeaway. Storytelling framework that's going to work every time, and it's going to give you the focus you need. So it's called the Once Upon a Time framework. Part 1, setup. There's a setup, once upon a time. Part 2, there's some type of conflict. Something bad happens, something terrible. Part 3, there's a resolution. We solved what was wrong. And part 4 is the outcome. Any of my salespeople in here, what do I mean by outcome when you talk about outcomes? I love it. The results, you could call it value, quantified value, but this is going to be important as we jump in. So setup, conflict, resolution, and outcome. It is that simple, and it will work for every story. I want to prove it to you. Anybody know who this is? All right. He hasn't been in the news in a while. All right. I'm going to play you the greatest opening theme to a TV show of all time. I want you to think through, what's the setup? What's the conflict? What's the resolution? And what's the outcome? Ready? And you can sing along if you want. You can stand up and dance, whatever you want to do. For Kirk. That was really good. You signed that whole thing. And then when the music played, you just kind of bobbed. That was really good. It was really good. All right, what was this setup?
West Philadelphia. Born and raised.
What was the conflict? What was the resolution? All right, and what was the outcome? What was the outcome? Yes. That is your framework. That will never, never, never let you down. This is your simple framework. Let's move on to 2 of 5. Conflict. Conflict. Anybody know who this guy is? He's all about conflict. If you've ever seen Seinfeld, if you've ever seen Curb Your Enthusiasm, he takes something that shouldn't be a conflict, he turns it into a conflict. That's what great comedians do. They find the comedy in conflict. When you want to be a great storyteller, it's conflict that you really need, and we're going to talk about this. So early in my career, people would tell me, Jay, you got to do more story selling. You got to tell more stories. And I was always like, okay, fine. I didn't really have a framework to work with, and so I would do things like, if I was in a job interview, I'd say something like, first I went to school here, and then I worked here, and then I worked here, and now I'm looking for a new opportunity. That was my story. But guess what that story was missing? Conflict. If you do not have conflict, it's just a series of events. That was a huge light bulb for me early in my career. You have to look for that conflict. And in order to have conflict, you need a hero and a villain. The light bulb for me here is villains don't have to be people. Villains can be global warming. Villains can be lack of organizational alignment. Villains can be customer retention, right? You can't seem to hold on customers long enough to be profitable. When you're thinking about sales stories, when you're thinking about business stories, you need the conflict, and your villain does not have to be a person. When you have the right amount of conflict, this is what makes the story so powerful. The emotion, the drama, this is what raises the stakes. Who's this? Yep. Sarah Blakely from Spanx. She has a killer origin story. Growing up, she would sit down at the dinner table with her family, and her dad every night would ask her, Sarah, what did you fail at today? What did you fail at today? And when she didn't have an answer, he was disappointed in her. He was disappointed in her because she did not go out and fail at something that day. And from those life lessons, she learned to become fearless. When the money men in the textile industries wouldn't take her seriously, she couldn't get her first prototype made. She was selling fax machines at the time, hustling Spanx, trying to get it off the ground. And then once she did get it off the ground, getting into major department stores was a whole nother level of conflict, of drama, raising the stakes in her origin story. Here's a quick excerpt, one of my favorites. Through storytelling, she has done such an incredible job. Spanx are not pantyhose with feet cut off. Spanx are a symbol of women's empowerment. Spanx are Sarah Blakely's fearlessness. They've done an amazing job through storytelling getting that into her brand. Let's keep moving. Number 3, great stories are succinct. Succinct. Anybody know who this is? All right, by show of hands, who in here has someone you care about deeply? You know them, you love them, you care about them so deeply, but they are absolutely awful at telling jokes and stories. They're the worst. Woo! Okay. Chances are, the reason why that's happening is because they're not keeping the setup in the beginning. They're not keeping that setup brief. Brevity is levity when it comes to storytelling. You gotta keep it brief. So let's tell, this is Grandpa Simpson telling an engaging, powerful story. Let's see if you guys can hear his brief setup.
We can't bust heads like we used to, but we have our ways. One trick is to tell them stories that don't go anywhere. Like the time I caught the ferry over to Shelbyville, I needed a new heel for my shoe. So I decided to go to Morganville, which is what they called Shelbyville in those days. So I tied an onion to my belt, which was the style at the time. Now, to take the ferry cost a nickel, and in those days, nickels had pictures of bumblebees on them. Give me 5 P's for a quarter, you'd say. Now, where were we? Oh, yeah. The important thing was that I had an onion on my belt, which was the style at the time. They didn't have white onions because of the war. The only thing you could get was those big yellow ones.
That video is like 40 seconds. Every time I play it, I swear it's like a 9-minute video. Whew. So the punchline here is if every time you go to tell a story, you need, a pre-story, and then you start your story, and then you need an extra story, and then your stories usually end with an apology. You need to keep that setup a little more brief. That's what great comedians do, right? Great comedians get on stage for the first time, and that joke might be 3 or 4 minutes that they're working on. And over time, that joke does not get longer. That joke gets shorter, it gets truncated, it gets tighter. So by the time that joke is ready for HBO or their Netflix special, that joke went from 4 minutes down to like 2 or 3 minutes, maybe even 90 seconds. That's the power of a great story and a great joke. So brevity is levity. When you're writing your story, over time, it should get smaller and smaller and smaller. One last story about succinct and simplicity. Anybody know who this guy is? Former CEO of Disney. You know his name? Bob Iger. All right, I'm going to tell you a quick story about Bob and the power of being succinct. When he took over Disney, I believe it was like 04, 05, and Michael Eisner stepped down, he was not a shoo-in for the job. He was the COO at the time, but he was not a shoo-in. And his challenge was, how did he convince the board that he was the right person for the job without piling on, without criticizing Michael Eisner? So he hired a political consultant. And this political consultant sat down with him and said, Bob, you are in a battle right now. You are in a war for the soul of the Disney brand. Bob, what are you going to do to protect that brand? And what are you going to do to grow its value? And it's got to be simple. And Bob got so excited. He was like, I have a ton of stuff I'm going to do. And he starts rattling it off. He gets to about 7, and the political consultant said, stop. Stop talking, Bob. When you have that many priorities, it's like having no priorities. You got to keep it simple. You only get 3. You only get 3 priorities. So that was a huge light bulb for Bob about the succinctness of storytelling, about the succinctness of his message to get that job. Bob came back with 3. Number 1, he had to increase Disney's branded content. That led to the acquisition of Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar. Number 2, he wanted to do more to embrace emerging technology. That led to Disney Plus, cash cow, more subscribers than Netflix right now. And number 3, increase the global footprint. He successfully got into both China and India. That's it. It went from, I'm so excited, I got a ton of stuff, to whittling that down to a small story for the board. And with those 3 priorities in that short story, he was able to align over 130,000 employees. He was able to align all of his businesses under the Disney umbrella and become one of the most respected brands on the globe. That's the power of succinct. Simplicity, keeping that story brief. Okay, we're doing great on time. If you want to tell a story at the end, I'm going to bring a couple people up. Just think about it, so I'm not really springing it on you, and then we'll talk about them. All right, 4 of 5, segue. This is my favorite. Anybody know who this is? Eddie Izzard. Comedians have the ability to get on stage and talk about like 100 different topics in 45 minutes. And it seems seamless because they do such a good job with the segue. They do such a good job with the segues. And people come to me all the time and they say, Jay, you gotta help me make my product pitch or my company origin story. You gotta help me make it funny. And I'm like, you don't really. You don't really have to do that. You just have to tell a compelling story and then bridge that story to what you really want to talk about. So when I opened today with my Fika Nasua story, I was able to build a connection, give you a little bit of authenticity, a little peek into my life, and then I was able to segue it to, when it comes to storytelling, does everyone in here speak the same language? That's the power of a great segue. So when you want the benefit of being more engaging, being more captivating of a story, the story doesn't actually have to be what you're selling. Just find a story and then link it. It's very, very, very powerful tool that has served me so well. So my salespeople, we talked about what outcomes mean. Outcomes can mean value. Outcomes can mean this is what it means for you. For sake of these next couple slides, let's talk about an outcome as the moral of the story. The outcome is what I want you to get out of this story. When we talk about the moral, if you have a disparate story that's giving you great connection, and then you're able to connect it, at the end of the story is what that means for you, what you need to understand. That's all you have to do to link the story you're talking about with what you want to actually be discussing. So for example, everybody know this Aesop fable? Everybody familiar with this one? I'll give you the 4-second pitch. The dog is really excited, so stoked about the bone in his mouth. He looks over into the water. He sees another dog with a bone and instantly wants that bone too. So he goes to attack that dog in the water. He loses his bone. What is the moral of that story? A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Don't be greedy. Be happy with what you have. I tried to tell this story to an old CEO I used to work for. We were about a $20 million company. He was hell-bent on getting to 40 million. Hell-bent. And he was going to do whatever it took. Well, what he was doing is he was hiring the wrong people. He was employing the wrong tactics because he wanted to double in size so badly. And I told him a version of this story. And I said, the things you're doing are going to change the face of the company. It's going to change our culture. We got to 20 million, we did it with something really special. Trying to get to 40 million, it's like the dog with the bone in its mouth. He didn't listen, but it was a great example. It was a great example of that story and a segue. All right, anybody know who these two are? They have a fantastic TED Talk. Jennifer Aker, Dr. Jennifer Aker, Naomi Bagdonas. Anybody familiar with them? Okay. What do you know about them?
How to incorporate humor to increase.
Did you really know that, or just read it right off the slide? I'm totally kidding. Okay, so I have an excerpt from their TED Talk. She tells a killer story about the CEO of a nonprofit, and then they're able to segue that killer story to what she wants to talk about, which is exactly what Sam said. All right, I'll be quiet. Let's listen to this excerpt from the TED Talk. How does she use segue powerfully?
Connor is the co-CEO of a large nonprofit, and in early 2020, just weeks after the world went into quarantine, he's leading his first virtual offsite with his entire organization. People are exhausted and scared. It's tense. So Connor shares a few slides before passing to another teammate to speak. But when he does, he intentionally leaves his screen share on. So his entire organization watches, thinking that this is a terrible mistake, as Connor closes his PowerPoint, opens up a Google search, and types in this. Things inspirational CEOs say during hard times. Everyone laughs. It's this beautiful moment of levity, and it has real upside for Connor and for his organization. Because we know from the research that leaders with a good sense of humor are seen as 27% more motivating. Their teams are more bonded and creative.
Killer story, right? You can use that story. The story doesn't necessarily have to be yours. How did she segue that so beautifully to get back to the topic she wants to talk about? Talked about the upside. Some of the most famous TED Talks of all time, I'm thinking of Sir Ken Robinson, Do Schools Kill Creativity? He's another one. Huge laughs per minute. The laughs he's getting on stage don't necessarily have to do with schools and killing creativity, but through segue, that should open up what you're thinking when you want to be more engaging, more captivating, whatever you're selling. As a CEO, as a salesperson, supporting sales, interviewing for a job, how do you open up your universe of stories, tell the story, and then segue by that outcome, by that moral? Very powerful. Huge light bulb for me to be like, anything in this world is game as long as I can segue it and use that moral. All right, last one, 5 of 5. And then we'll get some brave volunteers up to tell some stories. Details. Anybody know who this guy is? You all are great. I did a similar workshop with a startup, and they were a little bit younger demographic. They had no idea who Grandpa Simpson is. They had no idea who the Fresh Prince is. You all are fantastic. I really feel age appropriate here. All right. All right. Comedians, storytelling comedians, are fantastic in using details. And what details do in a story is details are what draw us in. Details is what hooks us and helps us use our imagination. So for example, and I am going to ask for responses here. For example, if I was describing a beach and I said, the soft sand was in between my toes, the temperature was perfect, the sun was on my face, and when I looked out into the water, I saw the sun glistening off the ocean. What beach are you at, Blake, right now? You're in Mexico. What beach are you at? You're in Malibu. Give me one more. Where did you go just now? That's it. One of the Great Lakes. That's the point. Details draw us in. And when it comes to details, it's about quality, not quantity. You don't want to hammer people with details, because then again, what? It's not succinct anymore. It's going to be too much. Give them just enough details to hook them, to draw them in, and let their imagination take over. Great musicians do this, great comedians do this, and we just did it with my description of a beach. So let's watch a quick clip from Sebastian Maniscalco. If you've seen this bit, it's hilarious. He's talking about the difference between when your doorbell used to ring 20 years ago versus when your doorbell rings now. What I want you to listen for is, what details does he say that hook you immediately and you go into your mind, right, with your imagination to make that story real for you?
The whole family went to the door. The kids were in socks. They slid up in the door. Nobody looked to see who it was. Right? You just opened up the door. You were like, oh my God, look at that. Look at who's here. And you'd ask them, what the hell are you doing here? And the person would be like, I was in the neighborhood. I thought I might stop by, see how the kids are doing. You're like, oh, come on in. We're gonna have some cake. Your mother had a little Entenmann's. With some Sara Lee crumble cake. Just in case company came over. She made an announcement when she bought it. She's like, listen, nobody touch this cake. This is for company only. Those crap muffins, those are for you people.
All right. What did you think of when you heard the details? What details popped out, and what did you think of? What was the first one that popped out for you? Christy? Sock sliding. What kind of socks were they for you?
I was thinking like really fuzzy, cushy, like red. I don't know, holiday type socks, just like sliding.
Perfect. Perfect. Cushy, red, holiday socks. What kind of socks were you all thinking of? Black socks, white tube socks. That's fine. He did the perfect job there. He captured you. He captivated. Boom. Okay, I know. I'm following you. I'm following you. What else? What was the other detail? There was one more. Entenmann's. Where did you grow up? Where did you grow up? California. I grew up in Florida, and when he said Entenmann's, I saw the white. We used to go to Publix. I saw the white box with the clear, and you open it, and there's white. Yeah, he got me. Yeah, that was it. So I was transported to my house growing up 20 years ago with just by him talking about a box of Entenmann's. Maybe it didn't grab everybody, but that was it. Okay, did we just lose power? Okay, all good. I don't care, I'll improvise. Be like, you're a comedian, deal with it. All right, so the idea here is the more concrete you can get with those details, the stickier they are, the longer that story is going to hold on. That's why facts, figures, things like that, they're not details, they're not sticky, they're not wrapped in a story. I feel like there's people on this, there we go. Hey, I feel like the whole time, I just wanted to make eye contact over here. One more quick story. This is one of my favorite sales story for my salespeople. There was a sales team that was struggling, and the sales leader could not turn around the sales numbers. He tried everything. He tried training, he tried coaching, he tried accountability. He could not turn it around. So one night, he had this great idea. He said, we're going to start a weekly sales contest, and the winner each week is going to win a frozen chicken. Guess what happened when he rolled out this frozen chicken contest? And every Friday he awarded a frozen chicken. Game on. He had the right team to stoke the competitiveness, to bring them together. He turned the entire sales organization around by giving away a frozen chicken. And they killed themselves week after week because they all wanted to hold the hilarious frozen chicken. Real story. What's the moral of that story? Did you say everybody loves chicken? I don't think that. Give me a hand. Oh, everybody wants to be recognized, right? It's not always about the money with salespeople. Some salespeople it is, right? The money's great. But it was about the recognition. It was about the acknowledgement. What a great moral to tell other sales leaders. Hey, are you just trying to motivate through money? I got a story for you. Frozen chicken. That's a concrete detail. That story will stick with you. Last one. Anybody know who this guy is? What did I say? I missed the, yeah, that's correct. Well, what's the joke? I want to hear for my next workshop. All right. I can't hear it. Yes, this is Jeff Bezos before he shaved his head and went on testosterone replacement or whatever he's doing. And what's he leaning on right here, folks? Anybody know? His original desk. What? So somebody said it in the back. Door desk. Let me tell you a quick story about the power of a concrete detail. This is part of Amazon's folklore. He's leaning on a door desk. Jeff Bezos started Amazon. Has everybody heard of Amazon? I'm kidding. Jeff Bezos started Amazon on his parents' life savings. His parents' entire life savings. And when it came time for him to hire in his first batch of employees, he shopped for desks and he was like, those are really expensive. I'm not spending that on desks. But luckily, his first office was right across the street from a Home Depot. So during lunch one day, he went through a stroll through the Home Depot and saw these doors. And he got a little idea. Doors are pretty cheap. How much for doors? 4 2x4s and some clamps there. That's how unsophisticated I am with building. Whatever these metal things are. Brackets. Brackets, doors, and 2x4s. And those were the first desks that Amazon employees worked from. The moral of that story? Amazon is innovative. We are frugal. And we're only going to make investments, we're only going to spend money on things that improve the customer's experience. Dang. What do you think that story did for early investors? What do you think that story did to align early employees? That's the power of a really well-told story with some concrete details that are succinct. There, that looks like the Jeff Bezos I know. All right, to recap. Number one, you need a framework. And if anybody asks, tell them, say, Jay hates the story spine. Hates it. You need a framework. I gave you the once upon a time. You got the framework. Number 2, conflict. Conflict is what amps up that drama, raises the stakes. It's what makes that story special. Number 3, it's got to be succinct. Stories should get smaller over the time, not longer, smaller. Number 4, segue. The world is yours. Tell any story. As long as you can link it, you can segue it to the moral, to what you're really trying to accomplish, right? No matter who your audience is, no matter what the purpose is for the story, to inspire, to lead, to sell, whatever it is, with a segue to the moral, you can get that done. And number 5, don't forget those concrete details, like the beach, like the door desk, like the frozen chicken. All right, we don't have a ton of time. We'll take 2. Jazz, that was too quick. That made me nervous. Who wants to tell? You only get a 2-minute story. Brandy, let's do it. All right, for real. This is my 7th Denver Startup Week. The second I let go of this mic, it takes me like 20 minutes to get it back. Brandy, 2 minutes. Yeah, you come up. 2 minutes. Anybody want to set a timer for me? For Brandy? Test. Can I use both of these simultaneously? Test. All right. Who's got a timer? All right. When she goes, you get 2 minutes. What's your story? So give us a context. What is your story about? And we won't start the timer until she goes. What is your story about, and what are you trying to accomplish with the story?
I'm telling you that now, or
Yeah, no. Give everybody context.
Okay, the context of the story is my life, and what we're talking about is the outcome.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. She gets 2 minutes. Go for it, Brandy.
And action. My name is Brandy Shigley, and when I was born in Manila, Philippines, I was actually abandoned at the hospital. My parents were nowhere to be found, and shortly after I was abandoned, I went into an orphanage where I was orphaned for about 8 months. After 8 months, I ended up being fostered by an amazing woman who took care of me and loved me in that in-between in my life. Eventually, I came to Colorado where I was adopted into my forever home. Flash forward to 35 years later, I meet this guy named Sammy Taggett, who is also a fellow adoptee from the Philippines, and we discovered that we were born in Manila and in the exact same orphanage and came out of the exact same orphanage within a year of each other. And at that time, we had just started making all of these fun fundraising events for our orphanage, not knowing that our orphanage was actually the same exact orphanage. So, my story really is about how it doesn't matter where we come from. It doesn't matter if you come from a story of abandonment, but we are all here created for a purpose, and to live in that purpose, regardless of where we started, is really just the beautiful thing. That was the super duper condensed version. Hi.
All right, first things first. That was a 90-second story. How much did she get done in 90 seconds? Okay, so succinct. Awesome job, Brandy. All right, what was the conflict in her story? Yeah, that raised the stakes pretty quick. Okay. This isn't your kid not listening to you. This is bigger than that. Okay, so your segue, I saw what you did with the moral. So have you used this in any type of sales or business situation to use that story to either inspire or and then be able to segue that to something? Like, you've obviously told that story before, but in what scenarios and in what context are you able to use that story and then link it to, and here's why we need to do blank?
Yes, I was able to use not knowing where I came from to hopefully inspire others to know that whatever our background is, that we really can do anything that we want to do. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with sales, but more just inspiring.
That's okay, and not every story has to do that, right? That story helped me build a connection with her quickly, right? I know where she's from, I know what she's about, and that was fantastic for that story. So not everything has to be a story to sell. Last thing, may I make some recommendations?
Yes.
Okay, details. Any details stand out to you all? Anything real concrete like a frozen chicken?
It was 2 minutes that made me leave out all the details.
That's okay, no problem. But Manila, couple of quick details. I've never been. Give me 1 or 2. Fundraisers. What kind of fundraisers? The foster home. What was that like? Where was that at? Just a couple of things. And I know you did. She admitted she abbreviated it, but those are some real powerful topics. Just a couple, and I'm boom, boom. Really awesome. Give Brandy another round of applause. Awesome. All right. Anybody want to do one more? One more. Right there. You. Yeah, come on. Say again? Oh, okay. I see you. All right. All right, we got her. Okay, can you do 2 minutes? All right, so we're going to do the exact same. That's okay. Where is... Test. To cry? No. All right, Anat? Ladies and gentlemen, Anat. All right. So before you start, what context do you usually tell this story in?
I haven't told this story before, so we're just going to make this up as we go.
Okay.
But
2
this
minutes.
is a story.
And what are you trying to accomplish with the story
Trying to
before you go?
accomplish a story about where I work and why I love it.
Okay. Ready? Timers? Go.
All right, so I started my career in management consulting. For those who don't know, that means you usually start at a big 5, you work like 80 hours a week, you never sleep, and you're always on the road. So I met my husband, really wanted to marry this guy. I mean, he is beautiful other than the fact that he has a balding head, but he's Jewish and he's balding. So that's okay. Met my husband, knew I wanted to marry him, knew that was not sustainable. So I left. I'm going to fast forward now about 6 years. Last night, I walked into my house. It's all going to tie together in a second. Walk into my house. I have 2 beautiful girls. One is 4. Her name is Ariel. The other one is Maytal. She is 1. I had been out of the home for 3 days with my husband on a little vacay away from the kids. And both kids come running towards me as soon as I walk in the house. Now, Maytal is crawling because she's, screaming because she knows she can't be as fast as the 4-year-old. The 4-year-old jumps on me, pulls my hair. Okay, point is, I have a picture, wish I could show it, but they're both clamming on top of me. And why does this all tie together? I now work for a company called Credera. We are a management consulting firm. We help companies transform by bringing together data, technology, and management consulting, change program management. And I love working there because our mission is to be a global boutique. All of our employees and all of our clients feel like they are the only one. And my entire career there, I have felt like the only one. I have grown more than I've ever grown anywhere else because I've had individual attention from leaders at our company to help me find my way and help me provide my clients with the best value and transformation they can get.
Keep it going. Stay there. All right. Real briefly, succinctness. Did we get it under 2 minutes? Great job. Let's talk about the details. What are some of the details that popped out? I thought she did a great job with that. Pulling the hair, crawling on me, pulling the hair. I loved all of that. Really, right? Because I have 2 kids as well. I saw all that. Okay, what was the conflict of that story? Okay, can I give you feedback?
Yeah, give me feedback. I love it.
So that was where I was a little confused because it didn't happen. But when you started talking about your management consulting company, I did hear the conflict. So bring the conflict as well back to the original story.
So this is why, because I had changed my mind because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to tie those 2 things together, and then I didn't tie them together. So that's good feedback.
Awesome.
I like
okay.
it.
And then the last thing is segue. Did we catch the segue from her kids, her husband, to what's going on at work? Did anybody catch that? Okay. So
it was supposed to be my kids clamming on me. It's how I feel about Credera. The way they attach to me, that's how I feel about Credera.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah,
so
do it.
What I was envisioning is, you said the attention the leaders give me. You could do something. The attention the leaders give me is like the attentions a mother would give her kids.
That
right.
Too. That too. I like that.
So
fits.
that's the direction I would go.
Work for us. That fits.
All right. So beautiful story. Did we lose it again? Beautiful story. Use the conflict. And then I think that's your segue. Like that's the type of
Yeah,
attention.
it was
that you're gonna
unrehearsed.
get.
I'll do better next time.
All right.
I appreciate the feedback.
Congratulations. Keep it going. Awesome job. Awesome job. Why am I having a problem with this? Test. 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 All right, one last story for you from me. We talked about juicers. This is what they say in the comedy biz. This is a callback to juicers. There's two juicer salespeople in a mall. They both look the same, they speak the same, they're dressed the same. The juicer salesperson on this side of the mall is told, I want you to nail this pitch in front of the folks in the mall. I want you to absolutely nail it. And then at the end of your pitch, I want you to perfectly pour the juice samples and hand them out. However, the juicer salesperson on this side of the mall was told, and this is a true study from Vanessa Van Edwards, the juicer salesperson on this side of the mall was told, I also want you to nail your pitch. Do it right, nail your pitch. But then at the end, when it comes time to pour juice samples, I want you to spill it. I want it to be embarrassing. I want you to recover the best you can and then finish handing out the juice samples. Who do you think sold more juicers? Why? He screwed up. Yeah. This is it. This is the whole punchline of the session, folks. This is the whole punchline of the session. Everybody is in sales in some way, shape, or form. We talked about you are the differentiator. It's not about perfection. It's about connection. The juicer salesperson that spilled the juice was who sold the most. And that rings true for all of us. I know I am very hesitant to tell new stories and to go out and develop these connections. This is absolutely a muscle. It's not about perfection. It's about connection. And the number one way to do that is through stories. Brandy, awesome. I couldn't have planned that better. It's like Cirque du Soleil when they pull somebody out of the crowd and then they're like on a dragon balancing. I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think they just pulled you out. All right, so here's your call to action. We're wrapping up. Here's your call to action. It's easy to tell a good story. It's actually really hard to tell great stories. It's really, really hard. And what you got to do is you got to practice. You could throw together a quick story. You did an awesome job for your very first time. You could make that story amazing. It's awesome. You don't need to get defensive. You did awesome. You looked great up here. The point is you need to work on that story. And you can only do it by practicing. So here's your 3 last takeaways. Number 1, this is what comedians do. This is what I do. Keep a story file. Anything that happens that's even mildly interesting in your life, keep a story file. Write it in your moleskin, find Evernote on your phone, whatever you need to do, just write it down and leave it there. Because you think you're going to remember, and then the next day you wake up and you're like, what was that story? You want a library to pull from. Keep a story file somewhere. Keep adding on to it. Number 2, always be testing. So, what you did is awesome. That was really, really, really brave and courageous. What I do is I start off with a story like that. First, I test it on my wife. And then my dad calls, and then I'll test it on my dad. And then I'll use it in like a client meeting. And then when I get to here, the story is really polished and ready to go. But then I need to keep more stories going. But the point is you always got to be testing these, and you always got to be working on them, making them more succinct. And then finally, what great comedians do is when they have new material, they do not come out all at the same time in one show with all new material. It's very, very risky. Even if it seems like a sure thing in your head, you want to pilot your stories one at a time. And what I mean by bookend new material is great comedians use a joke that works, a new joke and a joke that works. Makes sense, right? That way you're testing and you're not going to lose the whole audience. You're not going to lose the customer. You're not going to lose whoever you're presenting to. Take it slow. Always be piloting it. Try one at a time. All right. My wish for you is that you left here with one actionable takeaway that makes you excited to go out and try to tell a story in whatever it is you're doing. I'd love to hear. Just scream it out. What's your number one takeaway from the session today? Practice. Details. Awesome. Connection over perfection. Awesome. Succinct. Conflict. Who said conflict? Awesome. Don't tell a story in an interview like I did. What else? Spilled the juice. Take these stories. Take these stories. There's plenty of stories here to take and make your own. Last one. Anybody else? Framework. Framework and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Awesome. All right. Thank you all. Got a freebie for you. It's Pitch Lab's ebook, 10 presentation tips for comedians. If you're interested in this, it's totally free. Email me. It's j@pitchlab.io. Just write ebook in the subject line. Write anything in there you want. j@pitchlab.io. I'll send you a free ebook. It's got all kinds of awesome tips, things I learned failing as a stand-up comedian that I now use in the world of sales to do stuff like this. j@pitchlab.io. And then one last plug. Our clients are super smart people. They do amazing work. They just need a little bit of help with storytelling. We are a B2B professional services company. If we can help your team in any way, we'd love to talk to you. Also at pitchlab.io. I'm working on it. There's a squatter on .com, but I'll get there. pitchlab.io. One more round of applause for yourself. All right. And thanks to Denver Startup Week. Have a great week, y'all. Thanks so much.